Welcome to Selling Oxford. I am your host, Danica. I am so excited about my first episode. I have a guest with me today. Her name is Erika from Bear Fox. And I'm not going to lie, I sent out those messages like last weekend because I had been thinking about doing a podcast for a really long time and never really made myself do it. And then one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to ask a bunch of people if they want to be on a podcast with me. And some of them will say yes. And then I kind of have no choice. And I was so nervous to message you because from my perspective, you just are so amazing. And what you do with your brand is it's been so cool to watch. And I just think there's lots of small business owners and there's lots of people doing a good job, but just the way that you really went for it. And I saw you grow from when you started in 2020 to bands were wearing your t-shirts and you wrote a book, so much cool stuff happened. So I'm just really, really grateful that you said yes. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your perspective and how you have watched this, your idea, your baby grow from day one to where you're at now.
Oh, you're so sweet. Meanwhile, I'm over here and I'm like, I think I'm just stumbling through this a little bit. I don't really know if I have a plan. Yeah, it's been a wild 4 years. If you had told me back in 2020, where I would be today, I probably would think you're full of shit. I really didn't have a plan as to where I saw Bear Fox going. It's really been a very organic experience in terms of our growth and everything like that. But yeah, 2020 is a lifetime ago.
And something that I noticed too is I think because at the time it was COVID and everything was shut down. And so small businesses had this huge kind of push behind them, right? Everyone was shop small, support local, do what we can for our neighbors, because a lot of us were out of work. And I thought you did a really good job of kind of helping push that message across. It was one of the pillars of your platform, I would say, at the beginning.
Yeah. So and that's kind of the interesting, kind of dichotomy with Bear Fox is it almost seems like two different businesses, just in terms of when we launched in January of 2020, the tagline was wildly local, small town proud. It really focused on shopping small and shopping local. There was always an outdoorsy aspect to it. We always were taking our product photos and everything outside. I'm a very outdoorsy person. I grew up in the North. I grew up outside. So that was always an undertone, even when it was about shopping local. So that, in hindsight, actually really helped project the business, because we didn't know 3 months after launching that we were all going to be fucking locked down. Right. And, and shopping local was going to become, I would argue, almost overused. And near the end of the pandemic, that push to shop local was even Walmart and Amazon were using that. Right.
Yeah. That's
Support the people in your communities and shop at Walmart, which to some degree for sure. But so that side, the first couple years really did seem like a different business, just because the focus was a little bit different. And then basically what pushed the business into where it is now, being more of an outdoor lifestyle brand, was when I lost my Instagram account. I was kind of,
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up. That was so shitty.
It sucked. It really sucked. In hindsight, it was one of the best things to happen to the business, because then I was able to actually take a step back and change the branding just slightly, to where we are today, to now being an outdoor lifestyle brand. But yeah, when I look back, even at our photos from our first photo shoot, we invited a bunch of small business owners and employees to come and be models to launch Bear Fox. And so that shop local vibe was present from the get-go. right? Whereas now we still invite other small business owners to come to our shoots, but it's not with the same lens, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, because you're targeting like a different demographic a little bit, right? You're not just looking for like, you know, people in Oxford County. Like your brand now extends much more beyond that.
Yeah, and like Oxford was always going to be the hub where Bear Fox started, right? Like when we launched, we were available at Kintor Coffee and Betty's in Tillsonburg. So there is always this hub of where Bear Fox launched, right? And I even if it became some kind of like world dominating brand, it would still be Oxford County, you know, just because the locals here really did rally behind the brand, whether it was because of the shop local craze at the time, or if they really resonated with the logo or myself. Oxford had my back from the beginning.
Yeah, and that's something I think that's really interesting. So when I was telling my husband about doing this podcast, my husband is not a business owner. He has no social media, doesn't have the same like excitement that I do when I'm like watching a small business. I'm like, look at all these things that they're doing and what they're doing right. And, you know, for you, I was just like, man, like she gets it. And I was trying to explain like to my husband that I was just like, I just like would be so interested to pick her brain because to you it feels like you're stumbling through it, obviously, because you're doing the like R&D and testing out your marketing and your content. I'm such a marketing geek, but I never had like the gall to like do it because I was like insecure about how I would show up on like social media. And also my business was real estate, and I was like, what the heck am I gonna like, that's not interesting to me. Like I like my job, I like real estate, but I'm not going to create like some clever catchy reel partnering with some other cool local business to be like, hey, buy a house, you know? And so I was always like, man, how cool to be like, you just dreamed up this business and now it's like out there in the world. And like,
I mean, I always kind of fall back to, I have a business that is, I would argue, quite easy to market. Literally, you can do anything as long as you're wearing the product.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I'm thinking back to like the original days when you were like swapping the shirts out and like,
let's throw it back to the pandemic when everyone was doing fucking transitions. That was like TikTok, right? You were either dancing or doing transitions. That was what the app was. And I fell into the transition thing because I cannot dance for the life of me.
Oh, no.
But yeah, and I even like when it goes back to like the marketing of it, I just really come at it from a point of view of a consumer. I am on social media like above and beyond Bear Fox. What do I enjoy? What resonates with me? What is something that makes me want, like, what's a call to action that I would actually act on? Right. And again, it has changed through the last 4 years from when it was like a shop local initiative to now being like made for those happiest outdoors, outdoorsy by nature. What resonates with the brand and what I think is actually going to have that call to action to it has changed as well. But at the end of the day, I think that there's always been like a playfulness to the brand. We've never taken ourselves super fucking seriously, right?
I would say that you like from a consumer, like I own some of your goods, you know, like I have a couple of your sweaters, and like the first one I bought straight up to support you. Like I was just like, I think what she's doing cool. Like it was like the Christmas, like the striped, you know, thing. And I was just like, that's cool. I love Christmas. Like, you know, and I was buying into like the shop local part, but I've kind of seen that like change. And I think it's important to like always be like, you know, adjusting your brand to what you actually want to do with your business because it's yours, but then also listening to your consumer and like, you know, making sure that you're doing what they want and making them stay interested. So something I'd be curious to know is like, have you noticed your audience change as you've changed, like as your brand has adapted, or do you think it's just like, social media is, evolving, and so you have had to as a business as well?
I think like the core has stayed the same.
Right.
But there is now that we are doing more, I'm going to say like adventurous content.
Hmm.
Um, we have started actually organically getting more people from cottage country. So we've got the Muskokas, the Kawarthas, you got Halliburton, and then like even further north, right? We've got
Right.
a lot of Northeastern Ontario supporting the brand as well.
Oh,
Um,
that's cool.
and it is really cool. Like, and a lot of out west, like I've been getting a lot of orders to
Oh, interesting.
BC,
I
which
mean,
is
that
cool.
tracks, right? Like it makes sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting how that would all happen.
Yeah, it's, and again, like very organic. It's not like I'm not sending out targeted ads to these areas. I don't
Right.
really believe in paying for ads like
Right.
on social
Sure.
media, because honestly, I've done it, right?
Yeah.
And the ROI doesn't really seem to be there for me. But
Sure.
then when you're putting out consistent quality content, I just have to believe that it's going to find the people it needs to find if I'm doing the work.
Right.
I don't feel comfortable being like, here's my money, Zuckerberg, figure it out. Because like,
Yeah.
let's be honest.
Right. Well, and I mean, with the targeting too, like you can't, it's so tricky to like
And it's
target the
so
right people.
vague. It's so
Yeah.
vague, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to target people in Halifax, Nova Scotia because we're going to open a
Yeah.
shop there. Well, not everyone in Halifax, Nova Scotia gives a shit about the branding. Like there's just
Yeah.
so much more, I think.
Right.
And again, like I've tried. I've done the advertising and I just don't see the ROI on it.
Sure.
Opposed to actually putting together a thoughtful reel or branding session, like anything like that. I think
Right.
I have better ROI that way.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't used a ton of marketing myself either, like paid ads. I do for my listings, because I can target a local area. And so like
Yes.
I want everyone in this area to see this listing. But as far as like we did the Oxford County Moms Club, and even if with that, like the amount of money you pay for like, let's say 10 new followers, you're like, I could
Yeah.
have like, is it worth the time spent?
Right.
Like, no, I
It's
don't think so.
very, very similar with like giveaways as well.
Oh yeah, I actually am talking to someone else about giveaways, but I would love to know your opinion on social media giveaways because I have like a very aggressive opinion on giveaways
um,
that
well, I would say part of what helped me grow initially, I would even say the first 3 years was giveaways for
right,
sure. In the last year and a half, I just think social media is inundated with
yeah,
giveaways.
right,
And obviously, with the giveaways, you get spam accounts. You just run the risk of looking either cheap or illegitimate, right? Because you get
right,
all these knockoff accounts. That was one of the reasons I always wanted my account to get verified, was so anybody that was participating in a
right.
giveaway with me, they knew that it's only going to be Bear Fox Apparel with the blue check mark
Oh,
that's
right,
going to
because you were
contact
getting
me.
like the scammer accounts, right? That
Yes.
were
And I had followers giving fucking money to these accounts. And then they're messaging me. And I'm like, well, it wasn't me, first of all. And
yeah,
I'm sorry that you gave them $80 because you thought you won a $400 prize, but I'm not reimbursing you. I'm
sure,
sorry that happened, and I feel
yeah,
gross because it happened because of something that I had like put out
sure,
there, right?
right.
I also feel like my opinion on giveaways has changed a lot over the
Mhm.
last 4 years. Being a product-based business, I am inundated with requests for
Right,
giveaways, buck and does,
right.
charity, silent auction. I'm inundated with that.
Yeah,
And giveaways now has become part of that, where Like I start the year and I go, okay, I will allow myself to participate in 6 giveaways. So that's one every 2 months.
Right.
It needs to be, and like you have to do a little bit of your homework too. You can't just
Well,
agree.
yeah, because I think like from my perspective, like you're a pretty well established brand in like Ontario. And so for someone like me, for example, to be like, hey, like, will you give me some free stuff so that I can also like take your audience, you know? Like, and so like I think like you need to be providing just as much value for the person you're asking. Like I feel like I went over the top on this. I was like, okay, I want you to be on my podcast. I'm going to cut it in this many ways. I'm going to get this much content for you. Like I'll come record content of you to make extra videos. Like I'm going to exchange like, you know, probably 10 or more pieces of content for you to come on this because I'm so grateful for you taking the time out of running your own business to support what I'm doing. And I think that that gets lost sometimes and people are like, oh, I'll ask whomever, you know?
It totally gets lost 1,000%. And this isn't like a narcissistic comment to be like, I've busted my ass twice to get my following. Right.
Yeah.
And I've agreed to do giveaways where it wasn't totally aligned with my brand or it just didn't feel right. I've done that. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, sometimes it has paid off with followers and you're like, perfect. But then you eventually see those followers fall off because they are also not in line with your brand. Right. So I have very strict parameters now. When I agree to a giveaway, and this is something that business owners kind of learn as they grow. Like, what are your parameters? Do they have to have a certain number of followers? What does their content have to look like? What's their engagement look like? Who's actually putting this giveaway together? Because I have had people reach out to me and be like, let's do a giveaway. Like it's me, Danica, and JCB. We're all going to put in on a giveaway. And it's like, okay, good enough. Everything aligns. And then they literally do not know how to run a giveaway. And then I end up running it. And I'm like, but the whole point is supposed to be like hands off a little bit, right? Like if you approach me, you should have it kind of figured out. So now it's taken 4 years, but I now finally understand the power in saying no. Sure. And that saying no doesn't mean I don't support you or I think this is a bad idea. It literally just means it's not a fit for me. Right.
Well, yeah. And I think it's important too, because you have spent so long building your audience, and we're dealing with this with the Oxford County Moms Club because we are very intentional about the messaging we put in there, who's following us. Like we go through and remove like creepy dudes all the time, from no offense to like dudes, but like, why are you from like Michigan and following this Moms Club? And so I feel like an immense responsibility to the people in that community. And so if I'm just going to partner with like someone that wants access to them, I need to make sure that like their values align with my audience values so that I'm not kind of cheapening the experience for them in the name of like collaborating with another business that's not aligned.
Saying giving access to is totally the way people need to start looking at it, right? Like you are opening the door to all of your followers when you agree that Oxford County Moms is aligned with like Michigan dads. Just for an example, right?
Sure.
Like it's just like, it's like, why would you choose Michigan? Why wouldn't you choose like an Oxford County dad club or dads of Ontario, right? Like there's, you can do something very, very similar, but has just like a way more meaningful impact and more value to your followers. You also have to think like when you're doing these giveaways, is there value for your followers? Of course, you're going to do a giveaway to try and grow your account, but like it can't always be about me. It's social media. It is a two-way street. What are you giving to your followers that makes it worthwhile for them to even stick around?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. Okay, so this one I'm curious about. So I have basically only ever followed you on Instagram. Are you on any other social media platforms? Are there anything that you're like interested in trying, or are you just like still all in on Instagram?
Instagram is definitely my zone. That is my
Hmm.
happy place. That is where I have the best conversion to sales, because
Right.
as much as we want to talk about social media just being like social and interacting,
Hmm.
as a business at the end of the day, you need to think about your bottom line. So Instagram is definitely higher conversion rate. However, it is not the place I have the most followers.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? So TikTok, I've got double the amount of followers, but there just isn't that conversion rate. TikTok isn't necessarily where my demographic
There's
is.
not necessarily the same, like in my experience anyway, the same like opportunity to really engage with your followers like you can on Instagram.
Absolutely. Like 1,000% agree. And I know
Right.
TikTok is trying to change that,
Hmm.
because before you weren't able to even message people unless you were both following each other.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Which, if you have one video go viral and you get thousands of people following you, it is next to
Yeah.
impossible to follow them all back.
Well, and it
It
also
just
would like totally mess with your algorithm.
1,000%. And
Yeah.
it's not great. And then Facebook, we all need Facebook. It's like the key to Zuckerberg's
I'm getting
universe.
insane reach on Facebook with my stuff. Like that I'm like
Nice. That's
posting like
good.
junk. Like, and we posted a reel with the mom club that got like 3,000 views on Instagram, and we're at 1 million on Facebook.
Right? Like, you
And
just
I'm
never
like,
really know where it's going to resonate with
yeah.
people.
And I'm like, I don't even like, it wasn't even like a on brand. Like, I'm not even going to convert any of that because it was like just a random post, you know? I
Right?
was like, but I was like, oh, I should like, shouldn't be sleeping on Facebook, obviously.
Well, and so this is, it's so fucking dumb. I just recently was like, I have all these reels on Instagram
Right.
and none on fucking Facebook. Like, because like when you post on Instagram and like it cross posts, like your photos or
Yeah, it
whatever,
doesn't always
it
do
doesn't do
that.
that
Yeah.
with your reels. Sometimes it
It
doesn't,
does
sometimes it,
now.
right?
It depends on the audio you use, I think.
So that's it. If you add audio, it
Right.
like won't convert.
Right.
It's
Most the
so,
songs aren't like like I don't know what the
right?
law is there, but it seems that the songs aren't allowed on Facebook the same way they are on Instagram,
Which is
even
so
though it's
frustrating because
owned
like
by the
they're the
same
same.
company. I don't understand how that works.
Right? So literally like this week I was like, so we were building this snow fort in our backyard to sleep in. So it's a little bit,
Mhm.
it was actually more for TikTok,
Sure.
because TikTok is so like consumable and everyone on TikTok seems to fall into these like um series, right? So
Yeah, I think
that's
it's
how
like
it started.
yeah, I like people like to watch things progress, I find on TikTok, right? Like they want
Yeah.
to follow along on your story.
Yeah. So like it was kind of created for TikTok. And then I was like, well, I guess it's like throwaway content for Instagram. So I was throwing it over
Sure.
on there. And then literally like we went to sleep in it on Saturday and I'm like, holy shit, I never posted any of this to Facebook.
Right.
Convert it all and like move it all over
Yeah.
too. Um, but Facebook, yeah, isn't necessarily like my target demographic either. It seems to be like a
Sure.
little bit older. And the
Mhm.
type of content, or at least that I consume on Facebook, is a lot more like memes, right? It's
Right.
not so
Yeah.
much. I never watch reels on Facebook. That does not even cross my mind.
Yeah, I do sometimes, but not on purpose. Like I'll be on Facebook and I'll click on something and then I'll just like scroll through and then I'm like, what am I? It's like it's not curated the same way that like my Instagram feed or my TikTok feed is. So I usually am like, what even is this? And then I'm like, oh, wait, it's fake. How did I even get here on Facebook?
Yeah,
So
I
whatever
know.
they're doing to get people there is good, but I would say like the algorithm in it isn't very good for like I'm used to what my feeds feed me, right? It's
Yeah,
usually
exactly.
like, and then if I start getting like too much like famous people drama, I'm like, oh, this must be Facebook.
See,
Like,
and like even like I never even click on reels on Facebook because it always is feeding me this like before and after like weight loss shit. And I'm like, I don't
oh,
fucking care. Like, this is not
I get
what I
like
care about.
sister wives. I get tons of Sister Wives content and I'm like, I'm never going to watch this. Like, why do you want me to watch this so badly? I have no desire to hear about these people's
right. It's like where,
whatever.
like somewhere along the line, it picked up on something.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, I have said no how many times to these like before and afters of strangers. Like next, like
it's not my
no.
vibe. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just being a before forever.
I'm in my before era.
I'm in my before era. Yeah. Okay. So next question I have for you is, how did it feel to have Canadian bands wear and promote your brand? Like, for example, okay, so we made a sweatshirt with the Oxford County Moms Club that actually looks like a little bit like one of your Bear Fox sweatshirts. And I saw a lady at the grocery store the other day wearing it, and she has not engaged with any of our content. She hasn't come to any of our events. And I knew her from high school. So I was like, is that my sweater? And she like turned around all proud, like showing it off. And it was the best day of my life. And it was just like someone I already knew in town. So I can't imagine how you felt with like super famous musicians, like rocking your swag and promoting it to like, did it feel like surreal?
No.
No, you were like, I love that. You're like, no, I earned it.
So again, all of this happened like in the pandemic, okay? The fucking laws of the universe were not applicable because none of these bands could work, right?
Right.
So I reached out to the Glorious Sons, I reached out to the Trues, I reached out to Sharon Lois and Bram, I reached out to Tim Rosen from Schitt's Creek.
Wow.
Like I just literally messaged them on Instagram, and because nobody could work, they were actually on the other end of it. Right. Sure. And so they were like, yeah, sure. Like if that gives us something to fucking do. Yeah. So I had sent my merch out. So I kind of knew like to expect something. Did I expect the Glorious Sons to actually wear it in their promo poster for that year? No. Yeah. Did I expect them to wear it to Sarnia Bayfest, if that's even what they still call it these days? No. Yeah. Right. So like those were really cool surprises. Like, holy shit. Like this wasn't just like, we got swag in the mail, take a selfie, or like we've fulfilled the contract. You're actually continuing to wear it. So that aspect was cool, but very similar to you. I'm obsessed. I love getting the selfies, the tags and posts, the reels, the messages. Like even if people aren't sending me pictures, the messages that people send being like, I just ordered the Maroons crew neck and holy shit, I love it. I'm wearing it on like every hike this year. Like that is what I really resonate with, is more like the real people. It just means so much more.
Because it's more like organic, right?
It's more organic, and it's also when people take the time out of their day to send a message, or like I often get stopped locally and they're like, are you the Bear Fox girl? Because I just need to let you know, I love your fucking leggings. That like literally happened at Kintor the other day. This lady came up and she was like gushing, and I was feeling embarrassed. I could feel my face getting red. I was like, I'm just a normal person. Oh my God. Oh my God. But I am loving that you feel compelled enough to give that feedback, because as a business owner that has poured so much time, effort, money into this business, to have someone validate your products and like what you're doing, it sounds big-headed, but it is honestly just like on those really shitty days, those are the things that like keep you going, you know?
Well, and I think like, at least in my experience, like growing a brand. So I don't have experience growing a brand from my real estate business. You know, I view that very separate from like what I'm trying to do here and what we're trying to accomplish at the Oxford County Moms Club. Totally different experience. And I think it's like because on the back end, you know that you like want to build a community and like an
Mm-hmm.
audience, and you know that there's humans on the other side. As much as it's like exciting to like look at your numbers and your likes and your whatever, I have been made hyper aware of the humans on the other side, because I think what we're doing at Oxford County Moms Club is so approachable. And I would say what you're doing at Bear Fox is really approachable too, just by the way that you sort of show up in your content, and you know, you're not, like, I think some people get into like marketing brain and show up salesy, and they're like, today on Bear Fox, like, blah, blah, blah. And you can kind of feel that like business wall, or it
Mm-hmm.
seems unapproachable. But you from day one have just been like, look, like, I started this thing, like, this is the logo, like, I'm just doing it. And so, yeah, I think like I can understand why you would feel so pumped to like have a random lady in your neighborhood like be excited, as opposed to like, you know, a band being like, yeah, sure, like, I'll
Send me
wear
your
you.
shit.
Yeah,
Like
send, yeah, give me some free shit. Yeah.
we went to the Arkells played in Burning Kiln this summer. And
Okay.
me and a bunch of girlfriends, like, we took a limo down, the debauchery ensued,
Right.
and we're in line to get beer, and a lady like stopped and like grabbed me, and she's like, "Are you Baron Fox?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh my God, like, I had no idea you're gonna be here. I just love your shit." And then she just like kept walking, like she was going wherever with her friends.
Sure.
And my girlfriend behind me, she goes, "Does that ever get old?" Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, honestly, no. It's in the moment, it's kind of like throws you back, because you're
It's
like,
weird. Yeah.
I I I share my business and my business growth and a little sliver of my life with 10,000 people online,
Right.
right? And yes, there are people behind those accounts, but when you actually start to think about that number, 10,000
Yeah.
people, you're like, "Oh shit." Like,
Yeah. It gives, it's
yeah,
like,
okay.
even, yeah, like, and I experienced that even like on the Mom Club, we have like, I don't know, 1,200 followers, but it's very like local.
Yes.
And, and we have made a point of being pretty vulnerable on that account. And sometimes I'll like share on there, and then I like get like, I realize I'll like see how many people watched our stories. And I'm like, I just told 400 people this like intimate detail. I'm like crying about whatever, or like talking about my postpartum experience. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, that is so like, it's cool, I think, to know that had we started our businesses 15 years ago, we never would have had this experience. Like, the power of social media is insane, that like you can dream up Baron Fox and use a free app to promote it. And like,
Free, dude. We are selling a piece of our souls to be on these apps.
well, yeah, okay, monetarily free.
There we go.
Yeah. But I think that's like really cool to know that there's that opportunity there if you're willing to sell a bit of your soul. Or, and
Yeah,
I think just like not even selling your soul, but just being mindful about what you're sharing, so that it's not like, you know, too much, or you're not putting yourself and your family in danger by like sharing too much about
for
yourself,
sure.
right?
For sure. And because I have been granted the opportunity to basically have two Baron Fox accounts, right? The
Right.
first account, I shared a lot more of the growth of the
Right.
business, because I was literally starting from fucking nothing. I had
Yeah.
$500 in product and
Right.
was just like, I don't know
Yeah.
what I'm
Who wants
doing.
to
Like,
buy it?
it was a
Yeah.
lot more, I don't want to say a lot more vulnerable, but it was just a
Right.
lot more of like the bootstrapping stages. Whereas
Yeah,
now,
like
like,
you were documenting, right? You were documenting it as
exactly.
you go.
Whereas
Yeah.
now, on like the second account, basically,
Sure.
um, in that time frame when I realized I wasn't getting the initial account back in like
Right.
that week, I was like, okay, like that's it. I
Yeah.
did a lot of like fucking internal work where I'm like, am I upset because I lost 6,000 potential customers, or am I upset because I shared so much of my life, and it seems like nobody gives a fuck. Right? Because like, although like my community was coming to me, like they were flocking, they were excellent. Like that's literally one of the only reasons it worked to make another account. There was just this moment of I've shared too much, and I need to actually treat this account a little more professionally and utilize my personal account for like sharing pictures of my kids and not even just kids. I feel like that's the default people go to. Because they don't necessarily have like the consent
to make, in my opinion. Yeah.
But like even just sharing that like I worked out today, right? Like people following Bear Fox don't give a fuck about that. They want to know, like, you know what I mean? So it's finding that balance of sharing a little piece of yourself that you're comfortable with, but then also trying to draw the line of being like, I don't need 10,000 people to know I was on my echelon today and I had a smoothie for breakfast. Like they don't care. So I think it's just a lot of businesses are trying to find that balance. And some of them are very fine. Like they're totally fine not sharing any of their life and just being like, this product is on sale. These are our store hours. This like, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, people buy from people. They don't buy from businesses. So if you can find that happy medium.
I noticed that a lot in the real estate world.
For sure.
You can find like real estate accounts and all they post is like stats and just listed and just sold. And you're like, aside from the headshot that they post in their graphics, you're like, I don't even know anything about this guy. And in my experience, few real estate agents actually look like their headshot, you know? So it's more like a billboard. And I'm like, how are you keeping people engaged this way? You're kind of missing the point of social media, in my opinion, anyway. But there is also tons and tons of very bad social media advice in the real estate world. So they're just doing what they're taught. So
for sure. And like with like real estate agents, so like you're with Revel now. Right. And they do a really good job of playing with social media. Right. It's because no real estate agent ever wants to hear this, but like they're all the same. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. I totally agree. You're all doing the same job.
Yes. So it's very hard to differentiate yourself that way, especially if you're just posting just fucking houses or just numbers of the market in your area. But if you're posting, and it doesn't have to be personal stuff, but just like playing with that a little bit, then people like myself, who I'm not looking to buy or sell, but I'll follow this account because there's like
it's entertaining
information, and it's like part of your community, you know what I mean? So it's like I'll stay engaged even though I'm not their clientele. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. Well, and the thing too is I think if you only are ever posting on like just real estate information, just current stats, just like listings, you're only catching people in this like tiny opportunity in their life, right? Like when they decide, hey, I'm gonna, buy and sell, now I need to find a realtor. They're not going to come looking for you because they're going to engage with someone that's been engaging with them through whatever means they need you. Sometimes people use social media. Some people just like call people every month, whatever it is. But I mean, it's just such a missed opportunity. And though we're saying specifically real estate agents, there are some businesses that fall, victim to this as well. And they miss the, like you said, the being social part of social media.
Totally.
Okay, last question for you, because I have like a group of brands that I follow for like inspiration. You are one of them, but I'm curious to know who you follow and admire and look to for inspiration.
Oh, this is a tricky one. I did look at this question and then I was like, oh, fuck.
Who am I going to say?
So I'm going to give you an account that I look to that because Carolyn is basically my right-hand man. Like, we go on all these adventures together, right? So of course I'm going to say you should follow CY Photography.
Yeah, I do. I love her too.
Outside of Oxford County, and being an entrepreneur that generally works alone, I have found solace in Made for the Lake.
I knew you were gonna say that. I am so jealous of how talented she is.
Oh my God, Jackie is a beacon of fucking light. Like, we message each other probably every like 2 or 3 weeks just to touch base and be like, how are you doing? Or if I see she has a launch, or if she sees I have a launch, like, we'll always just kind of touch base with each other, because we, even though we've never met in real life, maybe 2024 is the year, we seem to have very aligned morals when it comes to not just
your
our
guys
clothing.
Are kind of playing in the same sandbox too with your
your
whole business, right? Like, same, only different. And I have one of her sweaters too.
Oh my God. I literally just changed out of one to put my
Oh yeah.
But she is very inspiring to me. I love that she quit her job in Toronto and moved to Go Home Lake and started her own. I absolutely love this. Everything about her, she is, like I said, a shining beacon of light in the shit show that is entrepreneurship. I can't get enough of her. However, there is a but. This isn't a but for Made for the Lake. But there are some accounts that initially were inspiring to me that then I just felt like I was comparing myself to them, or I was stopping myself from pursuing something because Danica's already done that. Right. So I did have to like mute some accounts, and occasionally I'll go back to them and just, like, if I know they have a drone, or if I know like we're in the same kind of like promotional space for properties or for like adventure experiences, I might actively seek out their account at that point just to be like, have they been here, or did they do something similar? Like, did they get like some cool shots that I'm not thinking of? But I really do try and distance myself as much as I can from some of those accounts, because we all know comparison is a thief of joy. And you do have to kind of forge your own path. And if you have people that are inspiring you, but ultimately kind of weighing you down, then you do not need to feel bad for the mute or even the unfollow button.
I go through that in cycles, and I just don't follow that many realtors, because when I was starting my, Instagram account, I followed a bunch of realtors because I needed like ideas, and I also wanted to like build referral networks and also learn from other people and get ideas. But you're right, like, especially because real estate agents are always posting like, just sold, just sold, just sold. And so if someone posts like 5 just solds in a row, and I'm like, man, I have like 1 client right now, then I'm stuck. Like, obviously I just suck. Like, and so there's a delicate balance there to find inspiration and community with that, what also like kind of keeping yourself in check so that you're not like discouraging yourself from doing the work. Right.
And okay, so real estate agents is a great example because there's a lot of you in a small area. So for me locally, right, there's BU was they were a huge inspiration, and they helped so much when I first started. Nikki and Allison were like fucking sweet baby angels. Like, I would ask a question and they wouldn't necessarily be like, here's all the answers you need on how to start a clothing business, but they would be like, oh, this is what works for us, or like we did it this way or whatever. Thames River Clothing, right? Like Kelly's also a sweet baby angel. And then you've got Ilbury and Goose. Like, there are local businesses that we are all aware we're playing in the same sandbox.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I see that Thames River Clothing just launched a maroon crew neck, for argument's sake.
Right.
And if I was thinking about it, I would either reach out to her and be like, hey man, I was just outsourcing a maroon crew neck.
Right.
Like, I just want to acknowledge that like the
That I
similarities are
felt like
there.
that exactly at when we saw you at Heart of Oxford and you had that sweater hanging and we were wearing our mom's club sweaters, and I was like, I feel like a jerk. Like, obviously it's different branding, but same thing. Like, and I'm not even a clothing company. This is just merch for my community. But I was like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to her and just like acknowledge that, though you knew I wasn't like trying to like, steal your lunch
No,
money, but I still was like, I need to acknowledge this instead of just like pretending that I didn't notice that sweater looks exactly the same as the sweater.
honestly, like naming it to tame it, right? And like,
Yeah.
and same thing, like there's been things that have happened, like not necessarily like locally, but like if
Right.
I, again, just for argument's sake, launch a maroon crew neck and then I see it pop up across a bunch of others, it's not to
Right.
say they're ripping me off. They all could have been in the same design process, right? I
Sure.
just happened to launch first. But
Yeah.
I know for myself that if I see something launch and I'm like, oh fuck, like I'm a week out from
Right.
essentially the same product, I will reach out and be like, hey man, like heads up.
Right.
Like Made for the Lake, she launched a loon. She had a bunch of
Oh
loon
yeah.
merch, like loon hat. And
Right.
literally I was working on a loon design and I
Oh
just
shoot.
could
Yeah.
not, I couldn't figure out exactly like how I wanted it, the spacing, the size, and all that shit. She
Yeah.
launched it and I fucking reached out to her. I was like, all right, so I'm not telling you to go suck a lemon,
Yeah,
but
but like
like,
that's the brand I wanted.
right? And
Yeah.
she again, Jackie was a sweet baby angel. She's like, oh my God, like you can totally, like, I don't own loons. And I was like, I
Right.
know.
Yeah.
I was like, I
Right.
know. But again, because we're playing in that sandbox,
Yeah, and you're
I
gonna have
just want to be
overlapping
cognizant.
clients, right?
Exactly. And I
So
just want
you're
to be
like, well, I'm not
cognizant
gonna.
of it.
Sure. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it will affect your bottom line too, right? If everyone's like, well, I already just bought a loon sweater. Now I don't need a
Totally.
loon sweater from you.
Totally.
So yeah.
Or she launches a sweater for $500 and I launched mine at
Yeah.
$450, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
then yeah, there's going to be some blood in the water because she's going to be like, well,
Sure.
what the fuck? Like,
Yeah. Right. Yeah,
now you're just
exactly. Hey.
like as much as you want to kind of have blinders on, sometimes you just have to take a look around at what is happening just so
Right.
you don't feed the sharks, man. Like,
Right. Yeah. And especially because in my experience too, like the small business community is so collaborative and so helpful. And it's
yes.
very rarely that you run across someone that is just like, figure it out on your own. And
Mm-hmm.
even in real estate, I've experienced the same thing. People are like very happy to share, their secrets. And some people hide it like behind a paywall. And you're like, okay, well, just ask someone else. Because at the end of the day, like you said, we're all doing the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
just our own interpretation of it. So yeah, it is like tricky, but it is important. I think those relationships are really important too. And for me, I would choose that relationship
For
over
sure. I
us
mean,
all
like
day.
like Todd, like Kintor Coffee is like
Mhm.
a brother. Like
Right.
he's just like my I can say big business brother because he's older than me.
Yeah.
But like, and it is actually very nice to like collaborate and have that relationship with somebody who's not
Mhm.
in apparel.
Sure.
And insane, like he'll come to me with questions or concerns or road bumps that he's like not totally sure how to get over himself. And
Mhm.
because I'm not a consumable product, I'm not in the food industry, nor do I have
Right.
employees or a brick and mortar. Sometimes
Right.
my solutions that I offer, he's like, holy shit, like I didn't even think about it from that way.
Right.
And so
Because
it's
you're
nice to be
outside the
able,
box. Yeah.
exactly. So it's nice to be able to like collaborate with businesses and people that really don't fully understand what you do, but they understand
Sure.
like the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because they'll just have like, a different perspective, and that'll go a long way. I wanted to say thank you so, so much. This was my first ever podcast, and you came on here with me. I'm so incredibly grateful for you. I am pumped to watch your business continue to flourish. And before we go, I just want you to tell people where they can find you on the internet for anyone. I do believe that everyone that will follow this podcast already knows you, but in case they don't, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook at baronfoxapparel.ca, which is the same for my website, baronfoxapparel.ca, because we're Canadian.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Erika.
Thank you so much, Danica. Have a beautiful day.